Can you just explain to me the whole history behind the exhibition and how it came to be and what it actually is and stands for, please?
Because you haven't seen the panel yet.
Oh yeah, because I haven't seen the panel yet.
So I'm standing here with Kim, who's holding the camera, and Kate, who's on my other side, and it's Kate that's asking the questions. So this exhibition, I guess this shows it's about the things that you keep and the things that you really can't keep, because the Victoria Gallery Museum is a collection of collections, and a while back, about 3 or 4 years ago, Matthew Clough, who was then the senior curator, asked me if I would like to draw in the fauna collection, so that's the animals in preserving liquids and stuff. And I really, really wanted to do it because for me, nature is kind of like a parent and art is like a parent, and I wanted to bring the two things together. Well, that's what my practice is about. And I was drawing away in the stores, and if you come over here, Kim, so the stores are like this. They're, well, they're a jumble. There's all, that's the tannoy, ignore it. They're a jumble of stuff. It's the most diverse collection you can imagine, with kind of x-ray machines and dentist chairs and all sorts, but the stuff that I was really interested in was the dead stuff in jars. And there are 2 rooms. There's a dry room and a wet room, and they're both in a concrete bunker underground underneath the car park, and no daylight, really, really cold and full of dead stuff. So kind of creepy, and I was drawing away in there, and I quickly discovered that I had to wear a lot, and also that if I stopped moving, and by which I mean properly moving, not just drawing, then the lights go off. So you're then in pitch darkness, in the cold, underground, with a load of dead stuff. And that's all a bit creepy. And then, really, really, really sadly, I learned that my dad was dying, and I entered a period of time during which I was doing this up here in Liverpool half the week, and then going down there, and we were looking after him for half the week. And it struck me while I was in Liverpool that the curator was trying her best to preserve this stuff, but it is dead, and at what point is it no longer the thing it is, and why are we hanging on to it, and all those things. It's all colourless, and my dad was leaching life and leaching colour, really, really sad, and there was this strong parallel kind of emerging between what the curator's doing up here, Dee and Leonie, and what we were doing down there, trying to preserve his life and stop him from going and recording it. You know, with photos and drawings, and my mum was writing, madly trying to record and preserve. And anyway, the place to start then in this exhibition, if you come, is by reading this in the end cabinet, which is a faux missing page. It's completely falsified, but it reads as though it's from a story, a book, as if from my life. So, my dad died, and my gran had also just died, so I was left trying to process those and make them into something that I could take forward. And my default mechanism is to make stuff that I take forward. So I started by looking at the collections within the family, and we've got nests collections, we've got china collections, buttons, and the wood engraving blocks of my gran. So if we go over there and start with the prints, as you can see, we're mid-install, so we've got tables and ladders and stuff around. But I started with these, which are the book plates of the family. My gran was a wood engraver, and a good one, really good, an artist. And she left all these boxwood, pearwood, lemonwood blocks. So I printed this set of book plates as a family tree. And I also was given some of her china, these teapots behind us. I know we're dotting around, which is tricky for Kim, who's holding the camera, but she's up to the task. So these teapots were in her kitchen, and I printed her garden design on it in her handwriting, because that was another thing that I was given, and tried to make one thing out of the two. And tea and drinking tea, sharing tea, and sympathy is something that goes together, isn't it? Also, I'm drawn every time and keep drawing that three-legged teapot from the Decorative Arts collection. This piece here, I don't know if you can see the spoon shape. There's a spoon shape in the middle of it. It's a number of blocks from my grand's collection, which is now kept by my Aunt Julia. We'll come back to Julia in a minute. There's a number of pieces, and they're really strongly narrative pieces. That means they have stories in them. That's the technicians coming back in. They're just going to come back in and put the last piece up, but we'll carry on. So things in here that you can see, that for example is a swan on the Harrow Canal. I can't remember the name of the canal, but she grew up in Harrow, and she used to take her box brownie camera and photograph it, and then she made wood engravings from the photographs a long time after. This is her mother, who was a pianist. This is her address. This is all about my gran then. And she lived near Hampstead Heath, which these ones are all Hampstead Heath, during the 50s and 60s and 70s, and then she moved to Sussex. So there's this strong kind of coastal, gorse and the Seven Sisters element going on as well. So it's all about her life. She was married to a man that worked in the bank, my grandpa, who also collected books. He collected. So back to the tea and sympathy thing here. This is about sharing an outpouring of grief. So you imagine it going onto the table in front of you. And I built a table and out of cardboard, sellotaped it to the plate to make that etching, and then poured acid down the plate. So there was a literal table involved. This is all about looking closer at my gran. So I've printed some of her wood blocks and then cut them up and made them into kind of microscope slides, but they also look like band-aids. And she was a very caring person in her way. Over here, these prints are more direct responses to the kind of visceral nature of the stuff in the jars behind us. So I'm standing between these two visceral things here. This is about the worminess and creepiness of things like snakes, tentacles, all of that, the tangle of this thing, creepy. And this is about the gelatinous nature of jellyfish, slugs, anything that is kind of mucus dripping and globular in shape. And I'm drawn to these things, the disgusting nature of them, and also repelled at the same time. This is about biology lessons. I absolutely loved biology at school because it seemed to me to be so visual, and that etching in particular particularly is based on the double injection turtle in the cabinet there. You can't quite see it. Come around this side, Kim, and I'll move the box.
Thank you.
Inside the coat, there's a double injection specimen, which means that some curator has chosen it to inject with a chemical dye, a stain they're called, one blue, one red, and they basically bring to the fore the specific systems. So I think the blue is the pulmonary system, I think, but you'd have to look closely to find out. The jacket that it's inside of is part of a collection of clothes brought back from the States by Julia. We'll come back to her in a minute. And the headdress is a conglomeration, a putting together of nests collected by my daughter, birds' nests and wasps' nests, moths reared by my dad, and other bits and pieces that we found in hedgerows and stuff. They were all on a shelf under my stairs, and I thought we'd put them into the show as a headdress. So the whole thing is a costume for a curator. If we come round here, there are two more prints that relate quite closely to the fauna stuff in stores. This one up here, which I call Stains, is about the double injection specimen. It was about it, but it came to be about Julia, who went away and came back. She went away at age 16 and was this kind of very glamorous figure, but always absent in my childhood. But she's become very important in my adulthood, and it's her jacket. She is the curator now of the wood engraving blocks. This down here is a complete forgery, and it's about type specimens and curators in general. Art curators and art historians, they kind of fabricate narratives around artists and then present them, and there are bits that they choose to put in and bits that they choose to leave out, but that becomes the real story. That's what lives on because it's documented. And I was thinking about that in relation to the curation of fauna, and I was thinking about type specimens, you know, this first female and first male ever found of a species, which gets preserved and labelled type specimen. And I made these type specimens in response to that kind of thinking, that line of thought. And they're clay worms, so they're not fauna whatsoever, they're forged fauna. These, by the way, are sun prints, very simple to do at home with your kids. In this cabinet here, everything's about my gran, so the china is hers, the garden stuff is hers, as we discussed. This is her umbelliferae collection, and here just for fun, I printed her garden plan onto tags, which I've also put on a honeysuckle at home, and given some to my cousin Jo, who's doing the same. In here is my family in a box, and these are two of the actual wood engraving blocks on loan from Julia. Thanks, Julia. In this box here, we've got Rachel. This is my daughter Rachel. She was 1 when she had her first ID photo taken, and this portrait is based on that photo. This box is all about continuity for me, and if I give Rachel anything, it would be kind of art and nature as two big things in the background in her life, and I think that, you know, it is happening. And if she was here, I'd say, right, Rachel, have a look at this frog skeleton thingy. It might be a toad. Get down really, really low, because if you don't get down low, you can't see the pencil marks in the box, which no curator has noticed. So you're the first one to see this, Rach. And it says, Killjoy was here, underneath the skull of the toad. I like to think this is from a stack of about 25 froggy toady things, and I like to think that they were also bored that they drew on them in their biology lessons, which is just lovely. Come round here. Let's not go under the ladder.
Bad luck.
No, and this is living proof that Rachel is really and truly embracing the art and nature thing. This is her book, The L of Nature. I love it because she's tried to draw it, she's stuck it in, she's tried to identify it, and she's even rubbed it. So she's made a rubbing of all the stain that's coming out of it. And then she's put, fact, I think this is reindeer lichen. And I love the juxtaposition of fact and I think. As you go around the exhibition, you've got to read these pages. They're kind of clues as to what's going on in the cabinet. And then down here, we've got postcards from my great-gran. She did a lot of travelling. She was the mayoress of Potters Bar, and then at some point in her life, she must have done masses of travelling, because there are postcards from Japan, Germany, as you can see, Italy, France, everywhere. And she didn't write on them. She collected them and brought them home, or she sent them home unwritten on. And for some reason, when I was in the fauna collection, this seagull and my great-grand got kind of connected in my head. It was under tissue, as it is now, which seemed to me complete nonsense, kind of denial of what it really was. But of course, it's quite sensible. It's keeping dust off. But if you think about it, that shape, which is currently a hat, could be a nest if it was turned up the other way around. And I was thinking about a seagull, all the places it's been, and the nest, home, something to come back to. And I made this print over here, which is the backs of the postcards. And I made a nest shape out of the air posty, what's that called, that visual? Anyway, you know what I mean. All of this thinking, complex thinking, it happens incredibly slowly. I mean, over months, because I'm not super bright or anything. And it happens from doing, so it's all about meaning emerging through process. I don't think, oh, this is a good idea, and make it. I think, what if, and then make that. This is documenting the cabinet behind me, but obviously it was made before the cabinet. And this particular stencil, that positive there, which is slightly egg-shaped, means something to me, but it won't mean anything to anyone else, but I'll tell you what it means. It's the back of one of the laser cuts in this down here. Can you see this kind of box shape? Well, that is going onto this wall here, where it will look like that. And it's a kind of a full stop in the show. It's a cartoon in ascending order with that egg shape at the top. And it's very, very sad drawings of my dad as he was dying, and I'm trying to record it and understand it, mostly to understand it, and then to accept it. And this owl appears here, and the owl gets bigger, and Dad's gone, and you're left to kind of figure out what happened yourself. I mean, for me, owls and frogs, I will always look at them and think of Dad, but it may be that you want to think the owl came and took him over to the other side, or he became the owl. It depends what you believe about death. But I hope you find something to find kind of meaning in here through. Try and think about the things that you're keeping at home and why you're keeping them. If you've read Harry Potter, it's a little bit like the Horcruxes. I always think it's this exhibition, that is, it's an attempt to put the people into things that you can then keep, so you don't lose them.